on every major platform. Check out all our shows at npr.org/podcasts. That's npr.org/podcasts.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Lawmakers are weighing in on the temporary ceasefire in the trade dispute between the U.S. and China, with President Trump pledging not to impose new tariffs on China for 90 days at the G20 summit in Argentina. Republican Senator Roy Blunt says he's pleased by what was accomplished at the G20, but he says the trade war has hurt Missouri farmers.
About 1 out of every 3 rows of Missouri soybeans were being exported to China. So whether it's those kinds of crops or pork or beef or chicken, we need to see some real specific figures here.
Democratic Senator Ben Cardin says the U.S. needs to make sure China comes through.
Clearly, it is encouraging to see that we are talking with the Chinese on the trade front. China has created many problems with trade. They have many obstacles to free trade.
Both men speaking there on Fox News Sunday. As representatives from almost 200 countries gather in Poland today for 2 weeks of climate talks, thousands of climate change demonstrators turned out in Brussels. Terry Schultz has more.
Organizers of the Brussels March called on international negotiators in Katowice, Poland, to implement the goals set in Paris 3 years ago, limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Up to 25,000 people were expected to participate. As many as 75,000 turned out, according to police estimates.
What do we want? Justice. When do we want it?
Charlene Durand was among them. She says she wasn't surprised by the high numbers.
It's just to show that there are many people who want action about climate. Nothing is really changing, and the planet is destroyed day by day.
Durand says she hopes politicians pay attention. Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel did, tweeting out his congratulations on the success of the climate march and promising he'll defend ambitious targets at the talks. For NPR News, I'm Terry Schultz in Brussels.
A sports complex in Tijuana, Mexico, housing thousands of Central American migrants, has been shut down. From Mexico City, NPR's Carrie Kahn reports.
State Health Department officials in Tijuana posted closed signs at entrances to the sports complex, citing poor health conditions, especially after recent rains flooded outdoor areas where migrants had been living under tarps and in small tents. There were more than 6,000 housed at the complex, which was planned for half that number. Authorities reported lice infestations and widespread respiratory infections. The migrants were moved by buses to an outdoor concert venue 14 miles away from the San Ysidro border station. That's where many who say they will apply for asylum in the U.S. need to report. The new government of Andrés Manuel López Obrador say it is meeting with Baja California State and Tijuana City officials to aid in what they say will be the dignified care of the migrants. Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Mexico City.
And you're listening to NPR News from Washington. French President Emmanuel Macron convened an emergency meeting on security today, following a third weekend of so-called yellow vest riots over rising gas taxes. Protesters damaged the Arc de Triomphe, and authorities say more than 130 people were injured, more than 400 others arrested. Israeli police say Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should be indicted on bribery charges. NPR's Daniel Estrin reports they say they have evidence Netanyahu gave bribes in exchange for positive press coverage.
Israeli police say Netanyahu gave regulatory favors to the chief shareholder of an Israeli telecommunications company. And in exchange, police say Netanyahu and his wife sought favorable coverage in the company's subsidiary news site. Police say from 2012 to 2017, Netanyahu and his associates got involved in coverage, seeking to place flattering photos and stories and remove critical stories, and sought to influence the hiring of editors and reporters. Netanyahu denies wrongdoing. Earlier this year, police recommended Netanyahu be indicted in 2 other corruption cases involving suspected bribes from businessmen and seeking favorable news coverage. It could take months before Israel's attorney general decides whether to indict Netanyahu. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Jerusalem.
The U.S. military has intensified a bombing campaign in Somalia, and officials say at least 9 militants were killed in an airstrike. That campaign has been going on for more than a decade, but the Trump administration changed the rules of engagement to allow U.S. offensive attacks. I'm Janine Herbst, NPR News in Washington.
And just like that, we're back. I so much appreciate y'all being here with us tonight. You are listening to Fate Radio on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, and we are out of Birmingham, Alabama. I'm joined tonight by my guest, Judy Griffin, Dr. Judy Griffin. She is just an amazing person. You can check out her website at www.aromahealthtexas.com. She also has a Facebook page of the same title, Aroma Health Therapy. No, Aroma Health Texas. I apologize, Judy. And I just said it right. I don't know what's wrong there. But, I have really been enjoying this. And like I told you, it's so fascinating to me to speak with people who can do things that are a struggle for me. And it's just interesting to hear how your family, went from historically, I think you said 4 generations of midwives and healers, and your mother with her rose water. And I know that I read that she would give it to you just to put on your hands so that you would feel good too. And I just think that's such a beautiful thing.
It brings up another topic I'd just like to mention. Here
Sure.
I go being pragmatic again. But the whole point of topical application of so many of the things we do is that the skin is your biggest immune organ. So we can affect the body in so many ways with the loving touch of healing with plants, as well as with the person you're working with, or if you're putting something on yourself, to really be thinking affirmative thoughts at the time. And when I first got into herbalism and such, you didn't hear much about things like that. Everything was about oral. Mm-hmm. And one of the things the reason I wrote Mother Nature's Herbal is because I traveled to different places all over the world to study with healers. And some of them were just people like me and you. They weren't high and mighty anywhere. But they taught me over and over again that topical is where a lot of the old-fashioned remedies really came from, including American natives. When I traveled all over the United States working with different tribes, and when they'd explain things to you and they'd show it to you, they put it in animal grease or some kind of a topical medium for application. So I think it's important to mention that.
Well, I do too. And I was doing that this afternoon, as a matter of fact. Most people know I'm recovering from, a fall and this, that, and the other. And I was having some trouble. And I actually have some lotion that is natural. And I used it because my poor little leg, it needed some love. And I took off the brace and did that. It worked. And I was so surprised. I have been taught too that, to take it internally was the way to go. And it's how most of us here, I think, are taught. But using it topically was such a relief and a release. I'm glad you brought that up.
One time I taught a class at UTA, and I was trying to really get students into thinking topical. So I brought some echinacea root. And echinacea, the real root of echinacea, not the commercial, whatever, it is so strong. If it's grown properly and harvested after 3 to 5 years, you can simmer it in some water and take a little sip, and it will just draw your mouth together like purse strings. And so that was my point with the students, was the American Indians didn't just drink gobs of these different herbs. A lot of times it was topical or very small amounts when they were taking it internally. And they didn't take them in little capsules either. I made my point, which I had a video of the look on their face when they tasted that echinacea. It's awful.
I would imagine. Because I don't think it smells attractive at all.
No, there's the flower's pretty, but
yeah. Well, it's like I had written down in my notes when I was going through some of your stuff. You always say, your nose knows.
Yes, and some people are
and
better.
Let your nose lead the way.
Now we do have people, and maybe somebody in your audience thinking, "Well, I can't do that because I don't have a good smelling nose." Or some people, I had one lady who came over and she couldn't smell at all. She said when she had her son, people would have to tell her when to change his diapers. It was that bad. She had no smell.
Wow.
And she came over to help me. She wanted to learn, and so she was going to help me in the gardens, and we were going to distill rosemary. And she stood in front of a rosemary that was at least 5 feet tall and 6 feet wide and said, "Okay, just show me where the rosemary is."
Oh, bless her heart.
Yeah. So we're starting on that level. Okay. And rosemary became her favorite scent, and she actually got her smell back, and it never went away. I don't think she ever had smell, from what I understood, but she brought it on, and she had to be in her 50s at that time. Wow. Yeah. And that just, even when we think we're not smelling, I think we are.
Well, it's all around us, and it is a natural sense.
And even though she didn't think she could smell, being around it and touching it, I said, take some home, some of the plant and everything. And I don't know how long it was, at least maybe a couple of weeks, but that's not very long. And she said she started smelling.
Wow, that was a beautiful thing for her.
Yeah, so there's a possibility. I'm not saying that rosemary brings back smell. That was just the herb that she was introduced to, okay?
Right.
But the fact that she kept being around it and trying to smell it, and when you distill an herb like that, she was here when I distilled it, and there is such a purity in the pure distillation of the volatile oils, essential oils, and mostly waters that come out. And it just infuses the whole place. And I think that helped also, because it got in every pore in her body before she left.
Well, that would do it.
Yeah.
But I had a question for you. I actually had this written out to the side of my notes because I don't know what it is. But what is a volatile oil?
A volatile oil usually has scent, and it lifts very quickly. And most, really, unless it's a chemical, a plant aroma, essential oil, water, anything, has got volatile oils in it, even though you may not see it, and they lift very quickly. That means they go to the top of the ceiling.
Okay.
That's what volatile means. And what's so beautiful about it, Kat, is it's transforming, just like our soul. Okay, this plant is doing the same thing as it lifts and moves and drives. It shows that it's a living being, for one thing. And you can't really see it going up in the air, but it does lift. If you've ever drawn a bath and had some aroma in there, you can smell it as it lifts from the bathtub up to your nose when you're, stepping into the bathtub. So volatile means it moves, it drives, and it's going to go up.
That's interesting. That was not what I thought at all.
Oh.
But I had no idea, so.
Like fancy, but I mean, that's